Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NPU Live. I'm Keri Rodriguez.
I'm Tim Langen.
It is Monday. It is Monday, April 22nd, 2020. Week 7 of the quarantine.
April 27th.
Didn't I say? Oh, I said
22nd. I wish it was the 22nd.
I'm sorry. I thought I said 22nd.
That's okay. Like you said, what do we say here? What day is it today?
It's Monday. Yeah. Oh, we're getting all out of it. We're getting everything out of this Monday too.
Well, what are our 3 days though? It's
yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Yeah, time's a man-made thing.
Yes, that's right.
Time's a man-made thing.
But we have a lot to talk about this morning. A lot to get to. A lot of exciting guests. We have Paige from the Data Quality Campaign. We have Sarah Teen from Metro Credit Union and an extraordinary leader from Massachusetts. We're going to talk to her about our financial literacy and what's happening in her universe. She's also a mama a couple of times over. We're going to talk to her about her experience as a mom doing some homeschooling, but also as a grandmama away from her grandbabies. And when you see her, you're not even going to.
I was going to say, she's a grandma?
Yeah,
wow.
She is. You're not even going to believe it. But it is Monday. It is raining up here in Boston. It looks like we're going to get one sunny day this entire week. And it looks like maybe just Wednesday afternoon. So it's going to be a tough one for us in the Northeast.
That's right.
So anyway.
So you know what we're going to do when we wake up on Monday? Hold on, I forgot, Keri. At the time.
Oh, here we go. We did get some special gifts in our Amazon packages. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Getting all of Tim this
morning. Since got some extra time. If you just want to flip that screen on the gun show here, Keri.
Right here.
1, 2.
He's grunting because those are actually heavy.
They're a little bit bigger than the size I ordered.
What are those, 12 and a half pounds?
12
pounds.
12. Gonna work up to the 12 and a half.
But yeah, so Tim's got his
got my things here.
And I'm gonna continue to eat more and more chocolate until I can't fit in the seat anymore.
I'll help you with that. I'll help you with that. Babe.
Oh my goodness.
So it's Monday.
It is Monday.
That's right.
Thank goodness.
Let me stretch out before I do that.
Yeah. How you feeling?
I need a nap now, man. Nap now.
All right. What's happening in the news?
Oh man. Pandemic. COVID-19. We're up to almost 55,000 deaths down nationally, out of almost 1 million cases, up to 965,000 cases now in the U.S. And along with that comes everyday changes. We talk about the small, well, not the small things, but how we can't go outside, social distancing, don't shake hands. Right now, I think we've been pretty good as far as food goes. You have to shop online. Be careful, wear a mask if you go into a supermarket. But there's some warnings coming out right now. There's concerns over the U.S. food supply chain right now because meat plants are closing.
Yeah, so those packing facilities. What's kind of interesting in seeing what's happening right now is that across the country, in places like Georgia is actually the poultry capital of the nation.
Okay.
Yeah, they do more poultry meat packing in Georgia than any other state. They have now reopened for some of their businesses. I was just listening to a report on NPR, however, that some folks are just not interested in opening. So it's kind of in fits and starts happening down there. But the meat packing plants, not only in Georgia, but Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, a number of different places, tend to be hotspots for the coronavirus. So as that starts to happen and these hotspots develop, you're seeing companies like Tyson actually close down a lot of these packing plants. So that's going to be reflected in what you're able to access at the supermarket. We don't always think about, how do these wonderful bags of chicken actually get to us? How do we get our chicken nuggets, which for parents like us,
need those chicken nuggets. How do you get into the shapes of dinosaurs?
Yes. Well, it's those people who are doing that work in the packing plants. So when we talk about disruption and you're going to start to see this reflected in your own life. When you hear these packing plants shutting down, eventually it's going to get to you.
Yep. And last week Tyson Foods closed down 2 of their bigger plants, one in Waterloo, Iowa, and one in Logansport, Indiana.
In Iowa, again, a state where the governor has been a little bit relaxed
That's
on
right.
restrictions. So unfortunately, I am really hoping that we're not going to have governors that are going to have to be taught a lesson before they understand the severity and the importance of really adhering to what scientists and doctors are telling us. But that's what we do on this show. So as a reminder, as we tell you every morning, make sure that your nose and mouth are covered. The CDC recommending,
right. Putting
a mask on, putting a covering, and try to stay at home, folks. If you don't need to go out, don't go out.
That's right. And they said, listen to your governor, unless your governor is the governor of Indiana or Georgia.
Well, bringing it back to Massachusetts, one of the things I wanted to bring up in the news today is that the remote learning guidance has been issued by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here in our home state of Massachusetts. I bring this up not to make the show Massachusetts focused, but to show you the power of parents, because this, over the past week and a half, we have been working very closely with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, giving our input based on the 17 chapters of Massachusetts Parents United across the state, giving their feedback, frankly, even to the point of sharing some screenshots from parents who were just wanting to have their voices heard about the real life struggle of what they're going through with their kids, trying to access remote learning, their thoughts, their guidance for the commissioner as he puts together his recommendations. All of that coming to fruition through this document that was released to districts across the Commonwealth on Friday. It's now being publicly released this morning. We have a copy of it, which we are going to be providing on our website for folks in Massachusetts. But the point of this is calling out all of our fellow organizations across all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. It is possible to advocate in this moment, and it is critical to advocate in this moment to make sure the voices of parents and families are heard, especially around any guidance that is coming down from your Department of Elementary and Secondary Education or your Department of Education, from your superintendents. You've got to get your voice in the mix, because policy is happening to you. If you want it to happen with you, you have to get in the game. So critically important.
Great. Thanks, Keri. Also, too, today, for all the small business owners out there, the Payroll Protection Program, a new round of loans are opening up today. So please, if you haven't been working on the application over the weekend, get that in now. We know what happened the last round. That money went quick. Very, very quickly. And Tim was actually working on our PPP application. That's right. That's right. We are a small business. And just to give you an idea of some of the things you're going to need if you want to get them handy. Yeah, this is real life, folks. And we mentioned this because we know so many parents are also small business owners as well. The top concern of parents and families right now that we're hearing is economic. Am I losing my business? Am I going to be able to file for unemployment? Am I going to be able to keep my job? So critically important. So, well, I think we talked last time, there are 110 million small businesses out in the United States, I believe. Only 30 million were able to apply last time. These small businesses make 48% of the economy. 48, so half of the economy is small businesses. That's crazy. So and they're in trouble. So you want to have, first of all, you need your payroll report from last year and this year so far. You need any reports on turnover and hiring. You need your certificates with the Secretary of State. If you're a nonprofit, please have your 501c3 letter available. I know where mine is. Right over there. Right over there. Don't lose that. You need an addendum as well, detailing some demographics for your company as well. Payroll, health and benefits. So guys, if you're starting it right now, I'm gonna throw you a bone here. This show's recorded. Log off and go fill it out now. Yeah, I mean, this is literally the moment when these applications are gonna start to be accepted. Tim worked all weekend on this to try to get this like when I'm done here, I actually have to convert something from a Apple page, whatever that is, to a PDF. Yes. So we're getting the stuff in as quickly as possible. You should too. And then when you're done with that this week, get ready for some more. I'm really excited about this week's shows. We've got some great shows this week. This week we have Virginia Walden Ford on. I'm really excited about Thursday. Virginia Walden Ford and Peter Cook on Thursday. Well,
we know Virginia Waldman Ford, just being an incredible parent advocate. Like she's been a hero in kind of the movement of parent voice for a very long time. She's now like a fancy movie star.
Miss Virginia.
She's Miss Virginia.
Miss Virginia.
That major motion picture just released a couple of months ago. It was just on BET. It's all over the place. So she's fancy Miss Virginia now, and she'll be on with us on Thursday, and then. Really excited too for tomorrow's show. Keri Gu and
Nehemiah Frank.
From the
Can't wait to have
Wall
him.
Street Times checking in to see what's happening. Great Schools, that website, doing an extraordinary job of doing rapid response for parents and families. And Nehemiah Frank, really, we've been highlighting the struggle of some of our older children, our kids who are in high school, and the loss and the grief that they're going through, losing some really special experiences.
Yeah.
That in Oklahoma, unfortunately, having some tragic circumstances, some children there unfortunately taking their own lives. So we really want to stop, take a very serious moment to talk about that and empower you with some of the signs of what you can do when your child is, or some of the signs that your child may be in trouble, and then what you can do if you need to support your child during a very, very difficult time. So excited to talk to Nehemiah.
I can't wait to hear how his nephew's doing with reading, because you talk about new experiences, losing out on new experiences. They're also gaining some new experiences. Nehemiah has been working a lot with his nephew.
Yes, it's an extraordinary story. He was just featured in the 74 for he's a former teacher, former principal. His nephew has a very special place in his heart. His nephew's mama is unfortunately incarcerated right now. So they've kind of like create a little bubble around his nephew. And now, Nehemiah actually has the time to focus and use some of his skills to help educate him. But he was really surprised at, how underserved he was, and the process in his triumph and kind of getting him up to speed. He's reading now, even during this short period of time, was pretty wonderful. And Nehemiah is a special guy, so it's
can't wait. I can't wait for tomorrow. I'm gonna be up all night.
Oh goodness,
that'd be great. Well, listen, also too, if you guys ever have any feedback about other guests we should bring on, any topics, any tips, any little bits you want to see, maybe instead of me lifting weights tomorrow, you want to see me do ab crunches. Last week I sang a Lizzo song. Maybe you want to see me sing a Pia Cetera song on Thursday. I don't know.
He's incredible, folks. Not just a pretty face.
There's lots of things I can do to kill time here. So send it to info@npunion.org. That's info@npunion.org. And Keri, while I'm going to go
work on our PPP.
I'm going to go work on the PPP loan. And why don't you bring on our first guest?
That's right. I'm very excited to welcome Paige Kowalski. She's from the Data Quality Campaign. The Data Quality Campaign, really good friends of this organization. Was lovely to talk with Jen last week. Data, critically important to the work that we do every single day, our advocacy as parents. And now more than ever, we're going to need to have data and information so that we as parents can advocate for the things our children need. So excited to welcome Paige to the broadcast. Paige, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Keri. Good to be here.
So you are right outside of DC, right?
I'm in DC. I live on Capitol Hill.
Wonderful. I think we talked to Jen last week, and she was saying that she was just outside. So give us the flavor of what's actually happening in the nation's capital right now. How is your family? How's your community? Are you surviving? You look great.
Well, thank you. I sit underneath a skylight every day, so I have this like golden halo that bathes.
You have an angelic look to you.
Yeah, I sit in a windowless room here as my office, so that's all I get.
Hey, it's something. It's something. If I open up this window right here, you will see a beautiful brick wall.
Yeah, and right behind me, you see a door that is my son's bathroom. So at any moment, spontaneity can happen.
No false moves.
Who knows what's going to go on behind that door? Let's see, the flavor of the nation's capital would basically for me be the flavor of what's inside my house right now, because I don't get out much these days. But this is always a weird town. It's busy even when it's not busy. So, I think people are working hard, but I think this general sense I get from people here and from listening to you guys talk and from my family and friends that are scattered all over the country is everyone's really, really, really struggling. And everybody is exhausted at new levels they didn't know were possible. And everybody's kind of operating at that like 60 to 70% level and just worried. We're all worried.
Well, Paige, talk to us as a mama. How are you doing with your family? How's the home going? How is all of that? Are you guys on top of each other? How have you figured this out? Give us some tips.
So I have teenagers. I have a 13 and a 15-year-old boy. So we have 7th and 10th grade here. I think I got lucky with timing because, if this had happened a decade ago, I'd be in a very different situation with toddlers at home. But they're both very independent and self-sufficient, and they get technology, and they're pretty.
Just bragging, okay? Because
it's luck. It's luck. I mean, I get my job done. And the littler one, I have to pay more attention to, like, is he getting his stuff done? But their school has been terrific. To go to a charter school in DC that's grades 5 through 12, so they're at the same school for middle and high. And they pivoted like that, which I know you've heard all those stories of these schools pivoting, and they've done a great job. The older one has AP tests next week. I have no idea what that looks like, but he's studying for that. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about them. I think, they miss sports, and they're friends to some degree, but they find ways to use Zoom. They were using technology to stay up with their friends anyway, even when they saw them all day. So
yeah, we're doing a lot of Fortnite, not a lot of Zoom, but a lot of talking on Fortnite, a lot of talking, hanging out in Minecraft, a lot of that kind of social interaction happening.
Yeah.
Are they eating you out of house and home?
Yes, although their new thing, I'm trying not to let them sleep too late in the day. I think that's our biggest struggle is I like to go in at like 8:45 and yell, good morning, it's a school day, get out of bed. I don't want them to get in the habit of sleeping like it's a Saturday or a Sunday, because I think we all need to hold on to some piece of the structure. So, they'll tend to eat like 11 or 11:30, and then they don't want lunch, and then 4 o'clock hits and they just start grazing. It's like, I want some nuts and some goldfish, and I'm going to eat a couple slices of salami, and they just start like grazing at whatever they can grab, and a granola bar and some popcorn. And then I'm like, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like, this is gross, and we're going to eat like soon. So that's really the biggest food struggle. Just trying to get them to eat. Like, we're eating less healthy than we were, which is weird.
Eating less healthy, moving less, missing
way less,
and having lots of little boys. That is the struggle of mamas across the nation right now. What to do with
exactly. They've been pretty creative. The oldest one has picked up. He's teaching himself like how to play the piano, and there's like an app that like walks you through. And then the little one has started drawing comics with a friend, like over FaceTime. And then he just got an app where he can do it on his iPad and animate it. And these were things they wouldn't have had time to do normally. So they're trying to be creative with their time.
I love it. I love the creativity of that. It's wonderful. Our kids will adapt, and now that we're into week 7,
yeah,
I find my kids too are getting a little antsy, but also more creative and kind of settling into the new normal a little bit.
Yeah. And those of us at a certain age sort of are finally gleefully sitting back going, this is what it looked like in the 70s. Oh. You sat around a lot and had to figure out what to do with your time.
It's funny because your lectures get a little different, don't they? Like
exactly.
That you used to have about, in my day, I didn't have screens,
Yeah.
Now it's, those lectures are evolving for all of us.
Exactly.
Paige, we're excited to have you on today to talk about the data quality campaign. I think a lot of the time when people think about parent advocacy, they just think about an angry mob of parents showing up, demanding, something. Not even sure what they're demanding, but they're pissed off. What the National Parents Union does is we are a network of more than 200 organizations across the country, these beautiful pockets of parent power, who aren't your average parents, frankly. These are the parents that are marching with data, with information, with a fire in their heart for justice, education justice, and really looking for outcomes. And we can't hold folks accountable just based on our own individual anecdotes. We need data to supercharge our advocacy. And you can see organizations throughout the National Parents Union using that data to really just light their campaigns on fire. So could you talk a little bit about the work of DQC and how you guys kind of fit into this whole mix of education? And then I want to dive into why your work, in partnership with parent advocacy could really be a powerful partnership.
Yeah. So, we've been around about 15 years now. And the idea really behind it was education had been a sector that had not been very data driven. Decisions at all levels, whether you're talking about, classrooms and school buildings or all the way up to the governor's office, were very anecdotal and sort of we just didn't have information about what worked. We didn't have good assessments. It was hodgepodge from school to school to school and district to district to district. So there was no way to compare. So you'd hear a lot of, and even when I was growing up, I didn't have AP classes in my high school, but I learned later that the high school 5 miles down the road had 20 of them. And so we would hear reasons of why that was. Well, kids in my school can't do that level of work, and so it's just like, well, why? How do you know that? What is that based on? Are there any schools? And so you mentioned great schools earlier. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I remember the day Great Schools launched, and they started talking about information you could get from school to school to school. And it was very empowering for me as a young adult to think about, so I could look at high schools that serve kids like the high school I went to, and they're doing something different. And it sort of takes that argument away of, well, they can't do it. Really? How come they can do it then? Mm-hmm. And that's a very empowering feeling. I think particularly if you're a parent, because if you're a parent, you're not an expert, but you can go in and say, if they can do it, we can do it. Right? Mm-hmm. We know how to do that. And that just like lit a fire under me and changed how I think about information and, quite frankly, just our right to it, that we deserve it. And you can't be a gatekeeper. Government or agencies or schools or whoever cannot be a gatekeeper on information, or we're never going to serve our kids as communities or parents. So a lot of the work we do is around that transparency piece and shining a light. If you go to your school's report card, whether you're a state that has an accountability system that's 8 through F or stars, or maybe there's no summative rating, there's high school graduation rates, all of that information is largely out there as a result of advocates who have come out and said, we need to know how schools are serving our kids. We need to be able to look across schools and see who's doing something better so that we can learn from them. And we need information to do that. You can't go forward unless you know where you are now. And you mentioned earlier, or you and Tim mentioned earlier about, what are the governors saying? Well, they're looking at information, right? They're looking at hotspots and outbreaks. They're looking at tests. I've heard Governor Hogan from Maryland say, I can't make decisions in the dark. And all these same things apply over in education as well. Is we need to know where things are happening and where they're not, so we can allocate our resources, our ventilators or our experts. It doesn't matter what the resource is, it's time, it's money, it's attention to the hot spot. And you can't do that without good information.
So Paige, let's dig into this a little bit, because folks like me, we get crucified on a regular basis for fighting for data, for fighting for information, for fighting for accountability, all of these things, right? Because the argument and the pushback is always that, testing, accountability, all of these things are so unfair. The way I see it as a mama is that, I wouldn't take my child to a doctor that didn't use a thermometer to check my child's educational health, that didn't use tools, instead of just relying on anecdote, looking at my kid saying, hey, he looks all right to me. He might look all right on the outside, but, trouble may be brewing on the inside. To me, when I take a look at assessments, testing, all of that kind of stuff, it's a tool that I need to use as a parent, that we need to use as a community, and the state needs to use overall, so that we can check the educational health of our children, of our schools, and our system. But there's always that fight. There's always the pushback around, testing really stresses kids out. Assessment is terrible. We're not assessing the right things. There's always this fight. And to me as a parent, it's very upsetting, because when I think about sending my child to school for an assessment, there was even one point where my Matthew, when he was in 3rd grade, the night before MCAS, which is our test up here in Massachusetts, I said, just mentioned in passing, I got an email that MCAS is happening the next day. I said, hey buddy, MCAS is coming up tomorrow. You feel good about it? He literally had a physical reaction where his shoulders hit his ears like this, saying, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, Mom. And it made me start to think as a parent, who is creating this anxiety in my child? To me, we sat down, we had that conversation, like, Matthew, this is a tool for mommy to know where you are, to see if you need help, to see if your teacher needs help, to see if the school needs help. You're not going to get in trouble. But I need to know, like, what's happening there, and this is a piece of it. So that really opened my eyes, like watching my own children kind of go through that. But it also made me pretty angry. The fact that data was trying to be kept from me, that we're manipulating kids into fearing assessment and checking in and having tools so that we can adjust. And then the fact that data is kind of thrown out. I just I watch the political drama unfold very often here in Massachusetts. We're even seeing it now, where even just the issuance of remote learning guidance is coming into like a political turf war now, where you're going to see unions fighting against it. How do you see this stuff as a parent? It just doesn't seem to make sense. This is your day-to-day fighting for good data so that we can actually make the best decisions. How do you see this politically?
Yeah, I mean, it is always so interesting to me that it is so political, and it's because we've attached stakes to it. And I agree with you. Kids pick up what they hear at school about the tests, and so you usually find where there's a lot of pressure and they talk about it a lot. And you find kids more nervous about the test, but you're right. I mean, you're talking about it the right way. It's a gauge of how well they're doing, but also it's one of many measures. Tests are just one measure. And it's only one measure of student learning. So there's lots of other measures. We need to be looking at attendance and chronic absence. We need to be looking at outcome data. Were they ready for the next grade? Looking at Chicago public schools and their 9th grade on track rate. Were kids ready for the 9th grade? And then the ones who weren't, what do we do with them once they're in high school? Did they graduate? Did they enroll in college or in a CTE program, or join the military, or get a job or apprenticeship? So we need to be looking at multiple data points, and even multiple data points in student learning. Assessments are one way. And it's no different than how we use data in our other parts of our life, right? Whether we're buying a car, we don't just look at the safety rating, we look at other things too, miles per gallon, or if you're buying an electric car, how often does it need to be charged? And we can't look at these assessments as this one big scary thing that says how schools are doing, or even how our own kids are doing. It's how do we get this culture of data use? How do we talk about it differently? How do we look at them differently? But you're right, the history around assessments has been very politicized. And I don't even know about history. I mean, it's really just been within the last 10 or 15 years as this data has gotten more public. You go back 10 years ago and schools were still handing out NCLB report cards on paper that were gobbledygook about safe harbor and what have you. It's really been, now that this is so publicly available and we're doing research using this information, it's starting to tell us about what works. And when you learn what works, you learn what doesn't work, and people get threatened, right? Whether you're going to have a phonics debate, or a charter school versus not charter school, or, which math curriculum you start, assessments is almost like the canary in the coal mine. That the real debates are about the programs and interventions and curriculum and models and policies, and the assessment is the piece that is sort of the leading piece that jumps into all that other stuff.
So Paige, let me ask you this question, because we are parents. I mean, you mentioned it from the top. I do think we're experts, but maybe just not experts on, every piece of edu jargon that's out there. We're experts on our kids, what works in our homes. Our context is really important. We have different kinds of data. And maybe, I'm actually hopeful that in post-COVID-19 world is actually going to be critically important to our children re-entering the public school system, our view, and really revamping how we look at assessments so that parent input is actually more of a part of the conversation, especially since we've been the primary teachers over this 6-month period for a good chunk of the American student population right now. But we have our own data, our own information. We aren't educators, but there are certain things that we have to understand. And the data can get really complicated. And every day you're kind of right in there, you're in the deep end with all of these information, all of this different metrics, all of these different ways to assess whether schools are doing well, not doing well. Give us a couple of data points for the average parent. What should we really be looking at if we're concerned about our child's school, our child's system? What are the hot spots that we as parents could kind of wrap our minds around that we really need to be looking out for?
Yeah, I think you want to look at, so it's about like sort of triangulating, right? Like those summative test scores on math and reading, our assessments there are really good. Whether you're a Park State or Smarter Balanced, or you've changed the name, our assessments are better than they've ever been, and they're actually aligned to the standards and what the expectations are in the classroom. So we have better data than we've ever had before. And those assessment scores matter. They are actually telling you something. But whether you're, scoring at the top or the bottom or somewhere in the middle, you want to look at something else, right? I mean, there are kids who just don't take these tests well, right? And so you want to find other corroborating evidence, right? Like, how were their grades? Does it match what the teacher's seeing? Does it match what I see? If I never see them doing math homework and they score really high on the math test, something is kind of weird, and their grade is really low. Like, that's the conversation you want to have with the teacher, is talk about what kind of effort do I see? What do I see at home? What are you seeing in the classroom? Where do you see them engage? How do you see them doing on all the diagnostics and the formatives? Where do you see them raising their hand? What kind of questions are they asking you? And then how does that match with that end of year score? It's kind of tying it all together.
That you bring that up in report cards, because we've learned, through, our collaboration with Learning Heroes, really educating parents across the country about the fact that, our report cards are not what parents think they are. They're a snapshot about effort and not really so much, whether or not your child's at grade level. As a parent, this is like the holy grail of information for us, thinking, okay, this document I'm being presented, I can trust this. This is telling me how my child is doing academically. And the fact of the matter is, in talking with teachers and administrators, that's not the tool that we should necessarily be putting all of our faith and trust into, because it's not the end all be all unless you're asking good questions and kind of diving into that. So I think that's really important. And personally, I think about what I go through with my Miles, who's really advanced in math. You take a look at his report card, he might be getting, a B, because it's talking about his effort, because he's frankly kind of zoned out and bored. He's not doing math homework, but you put math problems in front of him, and he's got this explosive mind that is just, eating up, even advanced math. Yeah. So it's really, I'm fascinated by, the fact that we've got to look a little bit deeper at these metrics.
Yeah. And really, data is really just, it should be the basis of a conversation. We always say data is not the answer. Data is the foundation of a conversation. And we're really good at doing this with our doctors, and we're good at doing this around our finances, and we're good about doing this, again, like I said, like buying a car or picking a movie, right? Does it matter if it's winning awards if you're falling asleep in it? There's other data points around that we know, particularly as a parent, like you said, we know our kids. So my 13-year-old is the same as you. He can do any kind of math. And I'll still get like some, midterm report, and it's like, well, he has a D. He's never turned anything in. And I'm like, okay, so I talked to him and I'm like, this is an effort thing, and effort does matter. I mean, we know as adults, effort matters. If you don't show, I tell them all the time, it doesn't matter if you know something, if you don't show up, like, if you don't do the work and show up and communicate well, it doesn't matter what you know inside your head. Nobody else is inside your head. So I do think those things matter. So I like hearing from teachers that they're trying, they're putting in effort, they work really hard, because I know as an adult those things matter. But I also know that their grade isn't just their content it doesn't mean they've mastered the content. And that's why test scores are testing content knowledge, and you need that content mastery to move on to the next level, because it's just going to get harder. And anybody with a high school student in particular knows there is a big difference between elementary school content and high school content. It is this march towards preparing you to do this really super rigorous college prep, like calculus, writing, critical thinking, chemistry experiments. You got to have that content knowledge, and tests are the only way to get there.
So let's blow this out to the larger level. And again, we're really oversimplifying this, just kind of talking in generalities, but you know, we appreciate you indulging our questions this morning, Paige. Blow it out to the larger level. Let's talk to our community of advocates here who are every day, you know, going to state houses, or, you know, now virtually going to state houses, but, you know, they're in the mix with their school committees, you know, on the state level, talking to the, you know, folks like the Joint Committee on Education, you know, going up and telling their stories of what they're seeing in their communities. How does data supercharge those campaigns, and why should parent activists and advocates be using data to really supercharge their arguments?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things. I mean, I think one is dig into your school report cards and find out, what are they telling me? How are they telling me? We put out a report every year called Show Me the Data. And we're not looking at like, what indicator did you use? How did you do the math? We're looking at, did you explain it in plain English? Are you using terms like park or value added? You know, how are you explaining this for normal people, even like me, that I don't want to see at 10 o'clock at night after a long day? I don't want to see terms like park. Just tell me how the school is doing. You know, do you have it in other languages? Are you really trying to speak? Are you making the report card easy to find and easy to navigate once you get there? You know, don't make it hard. So we really look at that kind of stuff and push on states to do a better job to get information out in really usable ways. I think separately from that, you know, parents should have access to their child's data, and not just a, you know, end of quarter report card, a piece of paper, but some sort of parent portal that they can dig in and see all of the information that the teacher sees about their kids too, especially now, because we're their teachers and we're kind of flying blind right now. We don't know what they've done. And then I think, like, at that community and advocacy level, you know, we worked with Parent Revolution in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles School Board had decided to do a school performance framework, which is a district report card. And one of the indicators was growth data. Now, California is one of two states that does not use growth data, which looks at not just like, are our kids reading at grade level, but while they were in the third grade, did they actually grow from their second grade to third grade, or from third to fourth? And then that starts to give school and teachers sort of credit for moving kids, even if they didn't meet that minimum benchmark.
That's not my favorite. That's not my favorite data point. Like you and I might disagree with this and on this. To me, I have seen growth data used in what I would deem as a very racist fashion. Like, I've seen school districts say, well, you know, our kids might not be proficient, but, you know, what do you want us to do with these kids from these people? At least they're growing. Right. You know, and to me as a parent, it's like, well, my kid still doesn't know how to read, but you're telling me he knows, you know, how not to read better than he did last year.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And
right.
We've also heard that around proficiency data, right? Well, we can't expect to get kids to this bar because they came in behind and they didn't have early learning experiences. So they started kindergarten not ready. And, you know, they have food insecurity. And so what all that is, regardless of the data point, high school graduation, post-secondary enrollment, growth data, proficiency data, it doesn't matter what data point, people who don't meet a good bar are going to look for excuses to explain it away. And many of those excuses slip into racism. You're totally right. But if you're a family looking for a school, if you're a community looking for who out there is moving mountains for kids, who's doing it? If I'm a fourth grade teacher and I get a kid who comes into, and I know this from my own kids' elementary school, they would get kids that came in 2-3 years behind in reading, and they would move them a year and a half or two in a year. and they still weren't ready for 5th grade, but they moved them almost 2 years in the 9 months they had them. That is something magical happening in that school. Those adults are knocking it out of the ballpark. And so when you're looking for best practices, who's growing, who's moving? Now, the power comes in putting the data points side by side, because while a school can really only get to growth, and a teacher, kids need to be proficient. So growth gives us important information about the school. Proficiency gives us important information about the student, because you're right, it doesn't matter if your kid grows 2 years if they're still not here, because they're still going to be behind in life. So you have to have both. And then none of that matters if they don't graduate high school ready to do something. So that's why we talk about multiple measures. You need all the data points, and none of that matters that they got A's in all their class because they were polite and raised their hand or what have you.
So good effort. If you show good effort and you still can't read.
Right.
Still not reading, yes.
And growth data as a community helps us understand, who do we call? Who's doing it great? Who has prioritized this and is fighting for extra resources and is helping kids move? And that goes true for our, wealthier suburban kids. We find that growth scores are pretty low there, because they're getting kids, Fairfax County here in Northern Virginia is one of the highest capacity, richest counties in America. They punted for 4 weeks before they did any online learning for their kids, and their kids will still do well in life. And it's where are the schools that are just working that extra mile to get that growth. So in Los Angeles, they added growth to their district report card. And somewhere along the way, the board decided they didn't want to do it. They hadn't released it yet. And the Parent Revolution, which is a parent group, you may know Seth Litt.
We have Revolution members in the National Parents Union.
Yes. So they drove a big campaign to make sure that growth data was included so that they had better information about their schools. And it was pretty phenomenal. And they won. They had this great social media campaign. They were able to use the research that we had provided and the data that we provided that helped make the point about why growth matters. And that was pretty exciting. We've also seen Go Public Schools, which is out in the Bay Area for West Contra Costa. Their parents did the data equity walk. If you've seen those out of EdTrust West, and understanding how certain kids are not being served very well in California, and particularly in their district. And they got very fired up about that, but then they didn't know what to do. And so they decided to dig. They saw one of DQC's infographics about sort of art of the possible, about what it could look like if teachers and parents use data better. And they said, well, that's what we want. And so they decided to dig in on a campaign, a parent advocacy campaign, to get the school board to use data better. And they've held them accountable. They've developed this rubric where they go into school board meetings and they have this rubric of different, what does it look like when a school board member is using data to make decisions? And then it's got, the rating across of 1 to 5, like you're not doing it or you're doing it great. And they rate them in the meeting and hand it in. And it's pretty phenomenal to see people really hold them accountable for doing that. And it, when people at the top are using information well, it does, if you can't just be a teacher trying to use data, it's got to happen at all levels. That culture piece matters.
We think that's so important. That's why we're excited to have Jonathan Klein from Go Public Schools actually leading our post-COVID-19 policy effort for the National Parents Union. They've been really smart and innovative on using data. That's a piece of all of the advice that in the recommendations we give to every single member. So we're hoping that, we're going to have a very data-driven campaign that empowers parents and kind of takes what Go learned from that campaign and disseminates across the country. Paige, we've got to hold you there because our time is short, but Paige, thank you so much for being with us. I think a really important conversation, very informative for our affiliates across the country. Data is critically important. You're going to hear us singing that song over and over and over again, and really relying on our friends from the Data Quality Campaign to help supercharge our advocacy efforts so that we can make sure post-COVID-19 education does what we need it to do, which is support our kids during a very trying time, but also a very magical time that could provide us with some avenues and opportunities for innovation. But we've got to have the data. We've got to be measuring to find out what works and what doesn't work. So happy to have you with us, Paige. Thank you for being a guest this morning.
Thanks for having me, Keri. I appreciate it. And let us know. You have my email, so email and let us know what you're hearing and what parents want, and we'll do our best.
Let me tell you, this is going to be a first conversation for us, many more to come. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Keri.
We're so lucky, so blessed to have access to some of the smartest people in the country really digging into a lot of this information. And, not just on the education front, but on all fronts, everything that's impacting families right now. And that's why I want to pivot to our next guest, really important conversation. She's a mama, but she's also the vice president of a bank. She leads the Latino Economic Advancement Coalition here in Massachusetts. She's a dear, wonderful friend of mine who really has the heart of parents and families first in her set of priorities, and families right now really struggling across the country. So we're so excited to talk with her, to get some guidance, to get some reflection, and just some solidarity. Sarah Rizzuto is with us. She's from Metro Credit Union. She's also a mama in Wakefield. She's a grandmama too. I can't even believe it, girl. You look fabulous. We are just, we're so happy to have you with us. So it's another homeschool day, week 7 for us. How are things going, Sarah?
I know. Thank you for inviting me and having me on. I'm happy to talk to you because there is so much going on and so much. I'm happy that you're bringing all this information to our community. It's very valuable information. But we're hanging in here. Week 7, it's just, like I said, been a very learning experience, learning curve for us. My kids, like me, are very active people, little people. They're involved in a lot of sports. We do a lot of work in the community together through many efforts, including the Latino Economic Advancement Advisory Council. You were part of the first one that we at Metro Credit Union had started in Boston. And I mean, that's one of the other initiatives that we have had to postpone as a result of this pandemic. We started the Lawrence initiative and pretty much had to cancel our next meeting as a result of this because we can't have people out and congregating, obviously. But thank you for having me.
Sarah, we want to start off, just with you as a human being. We have so much to get to, in our time together, but I want to check in just on your heart and how you're feeling right now. So many of us, just trying to stumble through day to day, do the best that we can, even those of us who are privileged to be able to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
But so many in our community, so many in our families, struggling with losing jobs, not having money come in, all of these things happening, in a very short period of time. And you're a doer. So how are you getting through these moments? You're helping your babies. How is it going?
I have to say that in the beginning, it took a lot of adjustment for me. Like I said, my children and I are very, very active. And I'm very active in the community. So it was a bit of a hard adjustment. I did I took 2 weeks off to be able to really look at the whole picture and figure out how this can best work for me and for my family, and making sure that we can all kind of make the best of this situation. I'm the type of person that really looks at the positive in every negative. I feel like, there's always something positive that can come of it. And I try to teach my children the same. But, one of the hardest things was watching my children as we've continued with the social distancing, really miss their sports friends, their school friends, miss their routine, and creating that routine and creating a new routine for them and having no control over, this situation. So it is what it is. You have to make the best of it. So I had to figure out a way to make them look at the positive side. And my son, as a result of this pandemic, is not going to be able to have his moving on ceremony. He is in 4th grade, moving on to the middle school. We have a planning committee that pretty much put together a great celebration. And, you know, he's really being impacted by not being able to have that event. My daughter is an athlete, and her team was number one. Yeah, she's something else, that one. I mean, she's quite a fighter, and she's taken it harder. She was supposed to go into this championship. She was number 1 in her hockey league. Her team was in 1st place. And so they were going to move on to a championship. Obviously, they had to cancel hockey. So she was looking forward to that. She was looking forward to celebrating with her friends. That it was really quite the milestone for her. And so that was very hard for her. I think, as you know, I have the younger kids and then I have the older kids. So the downside to it with the older kids is that I haven't been able to visit my grandchildren, like really hold them. I have to look at my granddaughter that lives down the street from me, like from the balcony of their apartment. So my son is like, okay, well, you know, here she is, and my grandson is waving, and it's painful. I'm happy I can still see them, but you just want to hold them. And sometimes people that you love from far is harder, because that's when you realize that you can't embrace them, you can't hold them, you can't really share emotions, and so that's been hit our family quite hard. But I have to say that at the end of it, I still feel truly blessed because I have a job. My husband is an essential worker. As you know, he is in law enforcement. So he's out in a very tough environment, the city of Chelsea, that's been hit extremely hard by the pandemic, the Latino, the immigrant community, that community overall. It's just been really tough for them. And he's in the middle of it. So
about the hot spots.
Yeah, it's a hot spot, yes.
Like that does not, you know, things don't stop. There's a lot that doesn't stop just because there's a pandemic. So, I mean, it's just so much, the intersection of so many different points of stress. Like it's just, you show such grace through this. You know, you're a natural leader. And so a lot of us look to you as like a temperature check, like, oh my gosh, you know, Saraton has all of this, you know, in front of her, but still, you know, she takes a deep breath and handles it with grace. You know, you're a beautiful example. You're just a beautiful example of how you handle yourself. And we're looking to you for even more leadership because, you know, as we do think about Chelsea and we do think about our communities, you know, and in the fact that, you know, even in the best of time, people like you and me and many different organizations were having conversations about how our communities are struggling, how there are so many of us who are unseen, so many of us that struggle with systems that are mired by racism, that there is, you know, there is a lot of struggle in even times when, you know, we thought the economy was booming. And in this moment, you know, while we're all dealing with our own personal circumstances and you know, trying to just wrap our minds around it, there are also, you know, economic circumstances that are hitting these communities hard. So I want to first ask you, you know, overall, as you take a look at our communities, and Metro, you know, has, you know, an eye on communities, you know, all over the state, you know, really closely watching what's happening. You know, this is a moment of struggle for many communities. So how do you see it from that perspective?
Oh my gosh, I mean, this is really a longer conversation than we have time to cover. But I mean, I think personally what we're doing, because I feel that part of getting through this is for all of us to come together in as a community and figure out what we can do individually to really help those communities that are struggling, those people that are really having, this is really making an economic impact, and are really struggling through this entire process. So I think personally, what we're doing as a family is we're trying to help with food, providing food. We purchase food, we then pack them. I include my children so that they know that there's a value and that there's a purpose in this entire experience. And our purpose is really to try to help as a member of the community. As far as other involvement in the community, I'm very involved with the food pantry as well, and I'm able to deliver food to people in our community. And with Metro Credit Union, we've actually developed a hardship loan, and are still open for drive up services in some of our community. We're really trying to figure out how to best support and help the communities in need moving forward, because this is really, I worry more about the long-term effect of this pandemic financially to our community. As you well know, there are people that truly need help that aren't asking for help because they're either scared, they're undocumented. If there's people that are undocumented living in our community, they're not going to take advantage of resources that may be available. Some communities aren't even making those resources public, really. And B, they're not sharing the information in multiple languages. So these people are struggling within our communities in silence, going hungry. They're not able to pay their rent. Yes, we have legislation that protects them, that they will not be able to be evicted. But at the end of the day, that rent, those bills are still accumulating, creating this situation of debt that's going to eventually put them in so deep in debt that, how are we going to solve that? Who is looking at the long-term impact of the members of these communities? And that is one thing that I'm, weighs heavy in my heart, and I'm really worried about, because I'm trying to bring people together to start having that discussion for members of the communities that aren't necessarily feeling safe coming out and talking about how this is impacting their family, that are struggling through the pandemic, even, coming out positive with COVID-19 and trying to heal their family silently in their home with no support whatsoever. These people are out there. We know these people exist. How do we help them? And that's one of the challenges that I've been having,
Yeah,
for the most part.
Something that's really important for us to drill down on is that, again, even in the best of times, we have so many families across the Commonwealth and across the country. I mean, this program right now, reaching over 1 million families across the nation. What we're seeing here in Massachusetts is not different from what we see in California, in Michigan, in Tennessee, in Florida, in New Jersey, all over the place. We're having this conversation every single morning, the same conversation. Our families, many of them are struggling in the best of times. Now we have created a pressure cooker situation on all fronts, where we cannot depend on a steady stream of income. If you can and you have a job, you're putting your life at risk and you're putting your family at risk for COVID-19. If you have lost your job, you are spending hours on the phone trying to file for unemployment. I mean, it takes upwards of 8.5 hours if you can even get someone on the phone. Websites are crashing. Stimulus checks not getting to families who are undocumented. There is no safety net. There are just all of these things kind of coming down on top of expectations around, living in neighborhoods that aren't always safe. We had one of our delegates to the National Parents Union, 2 of her nieces shot and killed last week danger in our neighborhoods not taking a rest just because there's a pandemic. So
Yeah.
we are just continuing to compound a lot of the panic, a lot of the tension, a lot of just the constant state of anxiety on families. And it's going to take strong leadership to kind of bring us together and understand what's on an entire family's plate. It can't just be, dealing with a piece of it. It can't just be dealing with, throwing checks at the majority of the population. It can't just be throwing remote learning guidance at parents and hoping that works. We've really got to start having a comprehensive conversation about, our communities, our neighborhoods, our families are wounded. And I think having conversations like the ones that you're calling for and bringing people together and understanding the full context of really what we're facing for a lot of our communities is going to be critically important. And frankly, it's got to be led by people who are closest to the pain, so that context actually makes it into these policy discussions that so often happen without us.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's important that people feel safe in their communities. I can tell you of so many members of my community that have been civically involved, that have contributed made contributions to this community, involved as volunteering in different events, as parents involved in volunteering in the schools, and that are immigrants, that are people that are needing support but aren't asking for it. And quite frankly, the information hasn't been made available in Spanish. And I feel like in general, they don't feel safe coming out. I also feel that the stimulus checks for people that qualified and got them may have helped the immediate situation, but like I said, my concerns really are moving forward, the aftermath of this pandemic, and yes, people have received the stimulus checks, but I feel that in the long run, nothing is free, really. How is this going to impact the rest of us, taxpayers, in general? We're all going to have to pay for this eventually, in my opinion. That's how I feel. And I know that there's a need to have, to give people stimulus check. I'm just, like I said, concerned of what this is going to mean in the long run for different groups of people, and who's thinking this through, and funds and resources that are available in different communities are one time only, and some even have a limited amount of how much they can give, of course, because they want to make it stretch, but what's going to happen in the next months, in the upcoming months, when people are, falling far behind on their rent, and there is no true solution when it comes to the financial impact that this is going to have to the members, the different members of our communities, especially people that are suffering through poverty as it is. This situation just made it worse.
So Saraten, in the last minute that we have here, I just want to give you an opportunity. And I know you are going through your own intersection of struggle from your perspective, but you're also such a beacon of hope. And, we're talking to, again, hundreds of thousands of families right now across the country that are struggling in this moment, but also, so many of us that are part of the National Parents Union are the doers, are the folks that are out in the neighborhoods, that are continuing to serve families, that are dropping off the lunches on your porch, and are continuing to fight to make sure that community voices are heard and that resources get to the right people. How important, what would be your message? How important is it that we continue the fight, continue to advocate, continue to lift our voices, so that we actually come through this together, and maybe can emerge from this with some new solutions that could potentially make our community stronger?
I think it's so important for us to look at collective solutions and really work together through this entire experience, because it's a new experience for all of us. I feel that what we can do as a community is, there isn't a perfect way of doing this. Just staying together and looking at the challenges that people are facing within your community and remaining positive and really occupying yourself with positive things and being aware of the way you're reacting, because there are people watching. There are, your kids are looking to you for guidance. You're the leaders in your community. The other people in the community are looking to you for guidance, and they're looking for support and seeing how you would react. So I think the key for this is just, to look at the positive side of things and remain positive, and really use this time to look at solutions moving forward, and how you can make an impact, a positive impact in your community, because this is really going to be something that's going to take a toll, I feel, in our community. And if we don't remain positive and look at solutions, it's really going to hurt us.
Saratan, thank you so much for being with us this morning. You're getting a lot of love on our Facebook Live this morning.
Oh, thank you.
So we're so grateful that you're with us. Saratan Rizzuto, she's from Wakefield, Massachusetts. I would go through the litany of public service achievements that this lady has, but you can take my word for it. She is an extraordinary powerhouse in all of our communities, not just in Wakefield. She's a state leader when it comes to bringing communities together, and also her extraordinary work as a vice president of Metro Credit Union, literally going out every single day and doing the work to make stronger communities in the best of times. This is just who she is and what she does. And we're just so blessed to have her with us.
That's great. And I appreciate her opinion too. This isn't a short-term issue. This is going to long-term.
It's not. And, having watched Saratan, just going back 2 or 3 years ago, having a conversation about how do we make our communities stronger? How do we strengthen them financially? How do we get more people building their businesses?
Right.
How do we make, our own personal economy stronger? This is a lady who actually sees,
the big picture. Yeah.
The pain, and she's just an extraordinary example of grace too. So
That's
wonderful to have her with us. That's another edition of NPU Live. We're so grateful that you're here with us. It is April 27th, 2020.
That's
It is
right.
a Monday morning. For those of you still keeping track.
That's right. I got that loan in, by the way. It's all set. In case anyone's wondering.
Yes, your PPP loan, your Paycheck Protection
Program.
Program loans are due today.
Get them in. It is not easy, guys.
Again, another, I think it was $400 million that was being added to that program, because the money was just gobbled up so quickly. So hopefully, if you have a small business, you are filing today. We are filing today. Thanks, Tim.
Just did it. And also, too, special thanks to Jose, Natasha, Tashfir. Who else we got here? Christy Joyce was on fire today online. Everyone was up, and Marky Markson was on there too. And so special thanks to everyone who tuned in today. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Tomorrow.